The old library stood quiet as the evening shadows grew longer. Most of the staff had gone home, leaving only a few lights on in the far corners where someone might still be working. For Lily, this was her favorite time. The night shift meant peace, quiet, and most importantly, fewer people to deal with. Lily ran her fingers along the spines of the books as she pushed her cart through the narrow aisles. At 25, she had made this library her safe place. For nearly 3 years now, the books never yelled, never threw things, never made her feel small. They just waited patiently on their shelves. It's full of stories about worlds far away from the one she had grown up in. She checked her watch, 8:45 p.m. Just over 3 hours until closing time. She still had 2 carts of returns to shelve and the reference section to tidy up. Lily liked having a plan, a routine that kept her moving through the night without having to think too much about anything else. "Excuse me," a deep voice called. From the end of the aisle, Lily's heart jumped to her throat. She hadn't heard anyone approach, and the suddenness of it made her drop the book she was holding. It landed with a soft thud on the carpet. She immediately bent down to grab it, using the moment to compose herself. "Sorry about that," the voice said, softer this time. "Didn't mean to startle you." Lily straightened up, keeping her eyes on the book in her hands rather than looking at the man. She recognized the voice. It belonged to Thomas, the new head of book restoration who had started working at the library just 2 weeks ago. She'd managed to avoid direct contact with him. Until now? "It's fine," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She slid the book into its place on the shelf, still not meeting his eyes. "I'm looking for the catalog cards for the Peterson collection," Thomas explained. "Ms. Rivera said you might know where they are. Of course, Diane would send him to find her," Lily thought. Her supervisor had been trying to get her to open up and be more social since day one, not understanding that Lily had carefully constructed her life to minimize these exact situations. "They're in the archives room," Lily said, finally glancing up. She immediately wished she hadn't. Thomas stood taller than she'd realized, his broad shoulders filling the narrow aisle in a way that made her feel trapped. He wasn't doing anything threatening, in fact. He was standing a respectful distance away with his hands casually in his pockets, but old instincts died hard. "Would you mind showing me?" he asked. "I've only been in there once during my orientation, and that place is like a maze." Lily's mind raced for an excuse. "I need to finish shelving these returns," she said, gesturing to her cart. "That's okay. I can wait," Thomas replied with a smile that probably seemed friendly to most people. To Lily, any man's smile was something to be wary of. She'd seen how quickly smiles could turn into something else. Growing up with her father had taught Lily that lesson all too well. Frank Harrison had been charming to outsiders, the friendly neighbor, the helpful church member, the hardworking provider. Behind closed doors, he became someone else entirely. His moods swung wildly, and neither Lily nor her mother ever knew what might set him off. A dinner served too cold, a toy left in the living room, a bill that arrived unexpectedly. Any of these could spark his rage. By the time Lily was 12, she had mastered the art of becoming invisible. She learned to read the signs, the tightening around his eyes, the way his fingers drummed against his leg, the slight change in his breathing. Mother finally found the courage to leave when Lily was in middle school, but by then, the damage was done. Men, especially men in positions of authority, meant danger. "Actually," Lily said, trying to keep her voice steady, "I can show you now. The sooner you find what you need, the sooner you can get back to work." Better to get this over with quickly, she thought. She led the way to the archives room, walking briskly and making sure to stay at least 5 steps ahead of Thomas. The sound of his footsteps behind her made her shoulders tense. But she focused on her breathing the way her therapist had taught her. In 4/4 counts, hold for 7. Out for 8. The archives room was tucked away in the basement level, a sprawling space filled with filing cabinets, document boxes, and the smell of old paper. Lily flipped on the lights, which flickered briefly before fully illuminating the room. She headed straight for the far wall where the catalog cards were stored. "The Peterson collection should be in this cabinet," she said, pointing to a large metal filing cabinet with tiny drawers. "3rd drawer from the top, under P for Peterson. Not H for Historical Society, which is where most people look first." Thomas nodded, watching her with interest. You really know your way around here? It's my job, Lily replied flatly already, backing toward the door. Is there anything else you need? Before Thomas could answer, the lights flickered again, more violently this time. Then, with a soft buzzing sound, they went out completely, plunging the room into darkness. Lily froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The archives room had no windows, not even the small basement ones that some of the other rooms had. The darkness was absolute. Looks like the power's out. Thomas's voice came from somewhere in front of her. She heard movement, then a soft clicking. Sound. A beam of light appeared as Thomas turned on his phone's flashlight. The old wiring in this place finally gave up, I guess. The small light cast strange shadows around the room, making the filing cabinets look like looming figures. Lily backed up until she felt the wall behind her, her breathing coming in short. Shallow gasps. Thomas moved toward her, the light bobbing with each step. Are you okay? He asked, his voice laced with concern. Lily couldn't speak. In her mind, she wasn't in the library anymore. She was 7 years old, hiding in the dark closet as her father's footsteps came closer, his voice calling out for her with that false sweetness that meant trouble. As Thomas came nearer, Lily pressed herself against the wall, her eyes wide with fear. Please don't hurt me, she whispered, the words escaping before she could stop them. The light froze. Thomas stood completely still, several feet away from her. In the dim glow of the phone light, she could see his expression change from concern to understanding. I'm going to sit down right here, he said quietly, lowering himself to the floor where he stood. He placed the phone on the ground between them, the light pointing up to create a soft glow throughout the room rather than shining in her face. I won't come any closer. Lily remained pressed against the wall, her heart still racing, but her mind slowly registering that Thomas wasn't advancing toward her. The emergency lights should come on soon, Thomas said, his voice calm and even. The backup generator usually kicks in within a few minutes. He was right, shortly after the emergency. Lights flickered on, casting a dim red glow throughout the room. Lily could now see Thomas clearly, sitting cross-legged on the floor, keeping his hands visible on his knees. I have a sister, Thomas said, after a moment of silence. She jumps at loud noises too. He didn't say more than that, didn't push for an explanation from Lily. Lily slowly let out the breath she'd been holding. For the first time, she really looked at Thomas, not with fear, but with assessment. He made no move to stand up, no attempt to approach her. He just waited, patient and still, giving her the space and time she needed. I'm sorry, she finally said, embarrassed by her reaction. Don't be, Thomas, replied simply. We all have our reasons for the way we respond to things. As if on cue, the main lights came back on, flooding the room with brightness. The sudden change made Lily blink rapidly. When her eyes adjusted, she saw Thomas still sitting on the floor, a respectful distance away, watching her with eyes that held no judgment, only patience. The days following the power outage were awkward for Lily. Every time she spotted Thomas in the library, her cheeks burned with embarrassment. She had shown her vulnerability to a stranger worse, a male stranger, and now she couldn't take it back. Thomas, for his part, acted as if nothing unusual had happened. When they passed each other in the hallway the next day, he simply nodded and continued on his way. No probing questions, no concerned looks, no attempts to talk about what had happened. Lily didn't know whether to feel relieved or confused by this. You're avoiding the new guy again, said Penny, Lily's closest friend at the library, as they ate lunch together in the staff room. Penny worked in the children's section and had a knack for seeing right through people. I'm not avoiding him, Lily lied, picking at her sandwich. We just work different areas of the library. Penny raised an eyebrow. He literally hid behind a book cart when he walked into the reference section yesterday. Lily sighed. It's complicated. It seems nice enough, Penny said, taking a bite of her apple. The kids love him. He helped me with story hour last week when Mrs. Chen called in sick. Did you know he does different voices for all the characters? Lily hadn't known that. She'd been so busy keeping Thomas at a distance that she hadn't noticed much about him besides the fact that he was tall and male. to qualities that automatically put him in the potential threat category in her mind. Anyway, Penny continued, Diane wants us all to work on the display for Local History Month. You, me, Thomas, and Ken from it. We're meeting tomorrow after closing. Lily's stomach tightened. A meeting meant sitting in a small room with Thomas, for who knows how long, but working with Penny would make it bearable. Penny knew about Lily's past. Not all the details, but enough to understand why Lily kept to herself. She would run interference if needed. Fine, Lily said, trying to sound unconcerned. But I'm only staying for an hour. Have ... plans. Penny smiled knowingly but didn't push the issue. The next evening, Lily arrived at the meeting room to find Penny already there, arranging chairs around the table. Thomas was by the whiteboard, writing down ideas in neat handwriting. No sign of Ken yet. Sorry I'm late, Lily said, though she was actually right on time. She always apologized first. Another habit from her childhood, when saying sorry quickly, sometimes diffused tense situations. You're not late at all, Thomas said without turning around. Ken texted that he's running behind. Something about a printer crisis in administration. Lily took a seat next to Penny, as far from where Thomas stood as possible. She pulled out her notebook and a pen, keeping her eyes down. I was thinking we could focus on the old mill district, Thomas said, finally turning to face them. The library has some amazing photographs from the 1920s that haven't been displayed before. That sounds great, Penny replied enthusiastically. The third graders are doing a unit on local industry next month. This would tie in perfectly. Thomas nodded, then looked at Lily. What do you think? You know the archives better than anyone, surprised. At being asked her opinion, Lily hesitated before speaking. The Patel family donated their grandfather's journals last year. He worked at the cotton mill for 40 years. There are some interesting stories in there. Perfect, Thomas said, writing it down on the board. Could you help locate those in the archives? Lily nodded, still not meeting his eyes directly. Ken burst in then, apologizing profusely about the printer situation. The meeting continued with everyone contributing ideas. Lily spoke only when directly addressed, but she noticed something unusual. Whenever she did speak, Thomas listened attentively, jotting down her suggestions and building on them. He never interrupted her or dismissed her ideas, the way her father used to do. After the meeting, Lily hurried to gather her things. Eager to escape before anyone could corner her for small talk. Lily, Thomas called as she reached the door. Do you have a minute? Her body tensed automatically, but she forced herself to turn around. Yes, I wanted to ask if you'd be comfortable showing me those Patel journals sometime this week. I want to pull you away from your regular duties. If you're busy, there was something in the way he phrased it, if you'd be comfortable, that made Lily pause. He was giving her an out, a chance to say no without consequence. I could show you on Thursday, she said carefully. I work the evening shift. Thursday. Works for me, Thomas replied with a small smile. Thank you. Lily hurried away, surprised at herself for agreeing. She spent the next 2 days alternating between anxiety about their upcoming meeting and irritation at herself for that very anxiety. Thomas had done nothing threatening. In fact, he'd been nothing but professional and kind. Thursday evening arrived, and Lily found herself leading Thomas down to the archives again. This time, the lights stayed on. She located the Patel journals quickly and spread them out on the large table in the center of the room. His handwriting is a bit difficult to read, she explained, opening one of the journals to show him. But the stories are worth it. My grandfather had terrible handwriting too, he said with a slight laugh. My sister and I used to joke that he should have been a doctor. The mention of his sister reminded Lily of what he'd said during the power outage. She found herself curious despite her usual caution. Your sister? She began hesitantly. You mentioned she jumps at loud noises? Thomas nodded, his expression growing more serious. Ashley went through a rough time a few years back. Bad relationship. She stayed with me for a while after she got out of it. He didn't elaborate further, but he didn't need to. The implication was clear. Is she okay now? Lily asked. Better, Thomas said. She still has moments, but she's strong. Started her own business last year, a little bakery downtown. Lily nodded, turning back to the journals. They spent the next hour going through them, with Lily pointing out particularly interesting entries. She noticed that Thomas never made sudden movements around her. When he needed to reach across the table for something, he telegraphed his actions first. When he walked around the room, he kept a respectful distance. These weren't random behaviors, Lily realized. He was being careful. For her sake, the following week, Lily observed Thomas from a distance as he helped an elderly patron find large print books. He spoke clearly, but not condescendingly, offered his arm for support without assumption, and listened patiently as the old man told a rambling story about his grandson. Later that same day, she watched him defuse a tense situation when a teenage boy got frustrated over a computer malfunction. Thomas didn't raise his voice or use his size to intimidate. Instead, he pulled up a chair, sat down at eye level with the teen, and calmly walked him through the problem. Small moments, ordinary interactions, but Lily noticed them all. She found herself paying attention to the way Thomas treated everyone around him with the same patient kindness. Didn't make her trust him completely. Years of fear couldn't be undone by a few weeks of observation, but something inside her began to quietly shift. "He's not like my father," she whispered to herself one evening, as she watched Thomas gently help a little girl reach a book on a high shelf. The realization was both obvious and profound. Not all men were the same. She had known this intellectually, but seeing it demonstrated day after day was slowly helping her know it emotionally as well. When Thomas smiled and waved to her across the library before heading home that night, Lily found herself raising her hand in a small wave back. Autumn had settled over the town, painting the trees in fiery colors and sending crisp leaves skittering across the library parking lot. With the change in seasons came the library's biggest event of the year, the fall fundraising gala. Most of the staff, it was an exciting break from routine. For Lily, it was a source of growing anxiety. "You can't call in sick," Penny told her firmly as they sorted through returned books. "Diane already put you on the schedule for the historical display. Besides, you helped set it up. You know those materials better than anyone." Lily sighed, shelving a worn copy of a mystery novel with more force than necessary. "There will be so many people. Donors, board members, the mayor's office, and half of them are men who will be drinking wine and getting too loud," Penny finished. For her, understanding the real issue? "I know. But I'll be right there with you, and you'll be stationed at the display table all night. Nice and safe." Lily wanted to believe her friend, but past experience had taught her that nice and safe could change in an instant. Still, she knew Penny was right about one thing. She couldn't call in sick. Not for the library's biggest night of the year. The day of the gala arrived all too quickly. The library closed early to the public, and the staff bustled about transforming the normally quiet space into something elegant. Tables were set up in the main reading room, twinkling lights were strung across the ceiling, and displays of rare books and historical artifacts were arranged throughout. Lily's station was the historical manuscripts display, a collection of letters, journals, and documents from the town's founding families. She had spent weeks helping Thomas select and prepare the items, including several from the Patel collection. While she wouldn't admit it out loud, working with Thomas had become less stressful over time. He never pushed for conversation, but seemed genuinely interested when she did speak. He remembered details she mentioned, asked her opinion, and most importantly, always respected her space. "Need any help setting up?" Thomas appeared beside her display table, carrying a stack of the programs he'd designed for the event. "I'm almost done," Lily replied, adjusting the position of a framed letter. "Just need to put out the information cards." Tomas nodded, setting the programs down on a nearby table. "You did amazing work with this display. The board is going to be impressed." Lily felt a small glow of pride at his words. "Thanks. The restoration work you did on the Patel journals really made a difference." "Team effort," Thomas said with a smile before being called away by another staff member. Lily watched him go, realizing she'd just had an entire conversation with him without feeling the need to escape. Progress, small as it was, the gala began. At 7, and soon the library hummed with the sounds of conversation, soft music, and clinking glasses. Lily stood behind her display, explaining the historical significance of the items to interested guests. Having a specific role and purpose helped keep her anxiety at bay. The genuine interest some visitors showed in the collection gave her confidence. By 9 o'clock. However, Lily was exhausted from the constant social interaction. When Penny stopped by to check on her, Lily asked if she could take a short break. Of course, Penny said. I'll watch your station. Take 15 minutes. The staff room is quiet if you need to decompress. Grateful, Lily slipped away from the crowded main room. Instead of heading to the staff room, she made her way to the poetry section on the second floor, her favorite quiet spot in the library. The upstairs was off limits to gala guests, making it the perfect retreat. She had just settled into the window seat with a sigh of relief when she heard footsteps on the stairs. Before she could move, a man appeared at the end of the aisle. One of the donors she recognized from earlier. He was middle-aged with an expensive suit and a glass of wine in his hand. Well, hello there, he said, his words slightly slurred. I was looking for the restroom, but this is a much better find. Lily's body tensed immediately. The man was blocking the only exit from the aisle. His smile reminded her too much of her father's, the one that came before the shouting started. The restrooms are downstairs, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. This area is closed to guests. The man took a step closer. Don't be unfriendly. I donated a lot of money tonight. Surely that buys me a few minutes of conversation with a pretty librarian. Lily's heart hammered in her chest. She was trapped between the window and the man, with bookshelves on either side. Her hands began to shake. I need to get back to my station, she said, standing up. People are waiting. Let them wait, the man replied, taking another step forward. What's your name? Should join me for dinner sometime. I know the owner of that new restaurant. Downtown? Lily pressed herself against the bookshelf, feeling the panic rising. Just as the man reached out toward her arm, another voice cut through the air. There you are, Lily. Thomas appeared behind the donor, his voice calm but firm. Diane's looking for you? Something about the Matthews document needing your expertise. The donor turned, looking annoyed at the interruption. I believe the gala is being held downstairs, sir, Thomas continued politely. This area is staff only tonight. We were just talking, the man said defensively. Of course, Thomas replied. Not confrontational, but not backing down either. But I'm afraid I need to borrow Lily for an urgent matter with one of the displays. He stepped aside, creating a clear path for Lily to exit the aisle. She moved quickly, passing both men without making eye contact. The Matthews document is in the West Wing display, Thomas said loudly for the benefit of the donor, who stood watching them with thinly veiled irritation. I'll show you where Diane is waiting. Once they were around the corner and down the hall, Thomas stopped. There's no Matthews document, he admitted quietly. Are you okay? Lily nodded, though her hands were still shaking. Thank you, she whispered. Do you want me to get Penny? No, Lily said, taking a deep breath. I just need a minute? Thomas nodded. I'll wait here until you're ready to go back down. Or I can tell Diane you're not feeling well if you want to leave. The kindness in his voice nearly undid her. Instead of answering immediately, Lily found herself saying something she never expected to share. My father used to corner me like that, she said softly, not looking at Thomas, but at the floor. In our house, when he'd been drinking. Thomas was quiet for a moment. My sister's ex-boyfriend did the same to her, he finally said. It took her a long time to stop feeling trapped in small spaces. Lily looked up at him then, really seeing him. That night in the archives, she began, when the lights went out. Thomas finished with a nod of understanding. I'm sorry I reacted that way. Don't be, Thomas said simply. You never have to apologize for trying to protect yourself. They stood in silence for a moment, a new understanding forming between them. I think I'm ready to go back down now, Lily said finally. Thomas nodded. I'll walk with you to the stairs, then head to my own station. That donor has probably found the bar by now, but if he bothers you again, signal me or Penny. As they walked toward the stairs, Lily realized something important for the first time since she'd met him. She felt safer with Thomas nearby than she did alone. It was a small shift, but a significant one in her world where men had always represented danger rather than security. Thomas, she said as they reached the top of the stairs. Thank you. Not just for tonight, but for ... understanding. He smiled. A genuine warm smile, with no expectations attached. That's what friends do, he said simply, before heading down the stairs ahead of her to give her space to follow at her own pace. Winter came early that year, bringing with it heavy snow that transformed the town into a quiet wonderland. The library became a warm haven for people escaping the cold, and the staff found themselves busier than usual. For Lily, the change in seasons brought unexpected changes in her life as well. You've been different lately, Penny remarked one morning, as they decorated the library's main desk with paper snowflakes. More relaxed. Lily shrugged, carefully cutting a delicate pattern. Into a folded piece of paper, have I? You actually volunteered for the children's holiday reading program, Penny pointed out. The old Lily would have hidden in the archives to avoid it. Lily couldn't deny it. In the weeks following the gala, she had found herself stepping outside her carefully constructed comfort zone more often. She still preferred quiet corners and familiar routines, but the paralyzing fear that had governed her life for so long had begun to loosen its grip. She didn't tell Penny that Thomas was part of the reason why. Since that night, when he'd helped her escape the uncomfortable donor, something had shifted in their relationship. They weren't exactly friends. Lily still kept most people at arm's length, but there was an understanding between them, quiet recognition of each other's struggles. The renovation starts next week, Lily said, changing the subject. Diane says we'll be working in teams to move everything from the east wing before they replace the flooring. Penny grinned. And guess who you're paired with? Lily gave her friend a sharp look. Please tell me you didn't ask Diane to put me with Thomas? I didn't have to, Penny replied innocently. She did it all on her own. Something about both of you knowing the historical collections best. Lily sighed, but the usual knot of anxiety at the thought of working closely with a man didn't tighten in her chest as it once would have. It was still there, a dull pressure. Rather than a sharp pain, familiar but less debilitating, the renovation project began the following Monday. The library remained open, but large sections were closed off with plastic sheeting as workers removed the old carpeting and prepared to install hardwood floors. Lily and Thomas were assigned to catalog and temporarily relocate the historical photograph collection, which meant spending several days working side by side in the reference room. I think we should start with the oldest photos, Thomas suggested. As they surveyed the cabinets of carefully preserved images, they're the most fragile and will need the most care in moving. Lily nodded in agreement. We should wear the cotton gloves for those. Some of the glass plate negatives from the 1890s are starting to deteriorate around the edges. They worked in comfortable silence for the first hour, each developing a rhythm as they carefully removed photographs, noted their condition and location in a spreadsheet, and placed them in acid-free boxes for temporary storage. My grandfather was a photographer, Thomas said as he gently handled a sepia-toned image of the town's main street from the early 1900s. Nothing professional, just a hobby. But he taught me to appreciate old photographs. Each one is a moment that would be lost forever otherwise. Lily glanced at him, surprised by the personal share. My mom used to cut pictures out of magazines she offered in return. She made collages on poster board, places she wanted to visit someday. Did she ever get to those places? Thomas asked. Lily shook her head. Not while I was growing up. After we left my father, she worked 2 jobs just to keep us afloat. She paused, realizing she'd mentioned her father without the usual tightness in her throat. She did go to the Grand Canyon last year, though. Sent me about 50 photos. Thomas smiled, better late than never. They continued working through the morning, their conversation flowing more easily than Lily had expected. Thomas told her about growing up with his grandfather after his parents died in a car accident when he was 8. Lily shared stories about the tiny apartment she and her mother moved to after leaving her father, and how the local library had become her sanctuary even then. That's why I became a librarian, she admitted. Libraries were the only place I felt completely safe as a kid. Thomas nodded, understanding. For me, it was the preservation aspect, keeping things from being lost or damaged beyond repair. Something and his tone made Lily wonder if he was talking about more than just books and photographs. By lunchtime, they had made good progress through the oldest section of the collection. As they prepared to take a break, the renovation crew began using a power drill nearby. The sudden loud noise echoing through the reference room. Lily jumped, nearly dropping the photograph she was holding. Thomas noticed, but didn't comment. Instead, he quietly moved to the door and closed it, muffling the sound. He asked, returning to his side of the table. Lily nodded, grateful for his understanding. Thanks. After lunch, they continued their work, moving on to photographs from the mid-20th century. These were in better condition but more numerous, requiring careful organization to keep everything in order. Look at this one, Thomas said, holding up a black and white photo of a young woman standing proudly in front of a library building. Their library, though much smaller than the current structure. Lily leaned closer to see.
That must be Helen?
Reed. She was the head librarian here from 1948 to 1972. Diane mentioned her during my interview. She looks like she could run the place with her eyes closed, Thomas observed with a smile. According to library legend, she once chased off a would-be book thief with nothing but a stern look and a dictionary, Lily said, returning his smile. They were still looking at the photograph when Thomas accidentally bumped the table, causing a stack of photos to slide toward Lily. He reached out instinctively to stop them from falling into her lap, his hand moving quickly into her space. Lily flinched, her body reacting before her mind could process that there was no threat. Thomas immediately withdrew his hand, stepping back to give her space. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I wasn't thinking. Lily took a deep breath, annoyed at herself for the reaction. Oh, it's not your fault, she said. Old habits. They keep us alive sometimes, Thomas replied. My sister still sleeps with her back to the wall and a clear path to the door. There was no judgment in his voice, only understanding, and Lily felt some of her embarrassment fade. Does it ever go away completely? She asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. Thomas considered this for a moment. Ashley says it changes, like learning to live with a scar. You're always aware of it, but it doesn't always hurt. Lily nodded, thinking about her own scars, invisible but ever present. Thank you, she said softly, for not making a big deal out of it. When I react that way, thank you for trusting me enough to keep working with me anyway, Thomas replied. Something about his words touched Lily deeply. He was right, continuing to work alongside him, to talk with him, to gradually lower her guard. These were all acts of trust she wouldn't have been capable of months ago. As they finished for the day, carefully storing the catalogued photographs in their temporary home, Lily realized she felt tired but not drained, as social interaction usually left her. Working with Thomas had become, if not exactly comfortable, then at least not uncomfortable. Same time tomorrow? Thomas asked as they gathered their things. Same time, Lily confirmed, meeting his eyes briefly. I think we make a good team. Smile that spread across Thomas's face was warm and genuine. I think so too, he said softly, walking to her car through the gently falling snow that evening. Lily found herself looking forward to tomorrow for the first time in a very long while. Spring arrived with a burst of color and warmth after the long winter. The library renovation had been completed weeks ago, transforming the old building with fresh paint, new flooring, and updated lighting that made even the darkest corners feel brighter. Lily stood at the main desk, watching as a group of school children filed out after their weekly visit. She smiled as one little boy waved goodbye to her, his backpack stuffed with picture books. They really love you, Thomas said, approaching with a cart of books to be reshelved. A kid with a dinosaur shirt asks for you every time his class visits. He just likes that I know all the dinosaur books by heart, Lily replied, though she couldn't hide her pleased expression. Over the past few months, she had gradually taken on more responsibilities with the children's programs, something she would never have considered before. It's more than that, Thomas insisted. Kids can tell when someone really sees them. Lily glanced at him, struck by the observation. Being seen, truly seen, was something she had avoided for most of her life. Invisibility had been her protection, her shield against the world. Yet somehow, without her quite realizing it, she had begun to lower that shield, at least here in the library. "Diane wants to see us," Thomas said, changing the subject. "Is something about the community reading program?" She asked if we could meet her in her office at 4. Lily nodded, checking the clock. That gave her an hour to finish sorting the returns and update the display in the young adult section. At 4 o'clock, she made her way to Diane's office, where Thomas was already seated in one of the chairs across from their supervisor's desk. "Ah, Lily, perfect timing," Diane said, gesturing to the other chair. "I was just telling Thomas about the new outreach program the board approved. We're going to be taking books and reading materials to the senior center twice a month." Lily listened as Diane explained the details the library would be sending to staff members to run short reading sessions and help residents check out books without having to visit the library in person. "I'd like you to take this on," Diane concluded. "You've worked so well together on the historical collection and the renovation project. The first session would be next Tuesday afternoon." Lily hesitated. The library was her safe space, the place where she had gradually learned to lower her guard. The thought of going somewhere unfamiliar, even with Thomas, made her stomach tighten with anxiety. "Can I think about it?" she asked quietly. Diane looked surprised, but nodded. "Of course. Let me know by Friday." As they left the office, Thomas gave Lily a concerned glance. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," she said automatically, then corrected herself. "Oh, actually, the idea of going somewhere new, with people I don't know, it's hard." Thomas nodded, understanding. "No pressure. If you're not comfortable with it, I'm sure Penny would step in." "Maybe," Lily said, though something in her resisted the easy out. She had been taking small steps forward for months now. Perhaps this was just another step, albeit a bigger one. That evening, as Lily walked to her car, she was surprised to see Thomas waiting in the parking lot beside his truck. "Sorry," he said when he spotted her. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable. I just wanted to say something before you decided about the senior center." Lily approached cautiously. "What is it?" "I volunteer at a shelter on weekends," Thomas said, "for women and children who've left dangerous situations. I teach an art class there. Nothing fancy, just a way for the kids to express themselves." Lily blinked, surprised by this revelation. "You never mentioned it?" "Wouldn't seem right to talk about it," Thomas explained. "Like I'd be trying to score points or something." He paused, looking slightly embarrassed. "Anyway, I was thinking, if you wanted to see the senior center before making a decision, I could take you there this weekend. No obligation to do the program, just to check it out." Lily considered the offer. 6 months ago, she would have refused immediately. 3 months ago, she would have made an excuse. But now, ... "Okay," she said finally. "Saturday." Thomas's smile was warm. "Saturday works. I could pick you up, or we could meet there." "I'll meet you there," Lily said, not quite ready for the intimacy of being in a car together. "Text me the address." Saturday morning dawned clear and bright. Lily spent extra time getting ready, changing her outfit twice before settling on a simple blue dress that felt both professional and comfortable. As she drove to the senior center, she tried to quiet the nervous flutter in her stomach. Thomas was waiting outside when she arrived. His familiar tall figure, somehow reassuring among the unfamiliar surroundings. "Thanks for coming," he said as she approached. "I'm still not sure about the program," Lily warned. "No pressure," Thomas replied. "Let's just look around." The center was bright and cheerful, with large windows letting in the spring sunshine. As Thomas introduced her to the staff and some of the residents, Lily was surprised by how welcoming everyone was. An elderly woman named Rose took a special liking to Lily, showing her the small library corner that was sadly understocked. "We don't get many new books," Rose explained. "Some of us can't read the small print anymore. Having someone read to us would be wonderful." By the time they left an hour later, Lily had a better understanding of why Diane had suggested the outreach program and why she'd chosen Lily and Thomas to run it. "What did you think?" Thomas asked as they walked back to their cars. "I think I'll tell Diane." "Yes," Lily replied, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. Thomas smiled. "For what it's worth, I think you'll be great at it. They stood beside their cars for a moment, an unusual awkwardness falling between them. There was something different about seeing each other outside the library, away from the familiar shelves and routines. Would you... double quotes Thomas began, then hesitated. Would you like to get coffee? There's a nice place just down the street. Lily felt the familiar flutter of anxiety, but it was softer now, mixed with something else, anticipation, perhaps. A coffee shop would be public, safe. And after months of working together, talking together, gradually building trust, the idea of sitting across a table from Thomas no longer filled her with dread. Yes, she said simply. The coffee shop was busy but not crowded, with small tables spaced comfortably apart. They found a quiet corner by the window, where sunlight streamed. Across their table, Lily wrapped her hands around her mug, drawing comfort from its warmth. "Can I ask you something?" Thomas said after they'd settled in. "You don't have to answer if you don't want to." Lily nodded, curious. "That first night in the archives during the power outage," he said. "You whispered, 'Please don't hurt me.' I've thought about that moment a lot." Lily looked down at her coffee. "I was back in my childhood for a moment," she admitted quietly. "My father used to find me wherever I was hiding. I'd say those words, but they never made any difference." Thomas was quiet for a moment. "Thank you for trusting me with that," he finally said, "and for giving me a chance to prove I'm not him." Looked up, meeting his eyes. "Thank you for being patient. For understanding without making me explain everything." "My sister helped me learn that," Thomas said. "After what she went through, she needed people to just understand without demanding her story." They talked for nearly 2 hours, moving from difficult topics to lighter ones, favorite books, childhood dreams, places they wanted to visit someday. For the first time, Lily didn't feel the need to watch the clock or plan her escape. She simply enjoyed the conversation, the coffee. The gentle spring day, as they finally prepared to leave, Thomas hesitated again. "Would it be okay if we did this again sometime?" Lily considered the question, searching her feelings honestly. The idea of spending more time with Thomas outside the library still made her nervous, but it was an exciting kind of nervous now. The kind that came with new beginnings rather than feared endings. "I'd like that," she said softly. Walking to her car, Lily realized something had shifted inside her. The fear that had governed her life for so long hadn't disappeared entirely. Perhaps it never would. But it had changed, becoming smaller, less controlling. She had found room for other feelings beside it. Trust, friendship, and perhaps someday something more. As Thomas waved goodbye from beside his truck, Lily smiled and waved back. No longer afraid of being seen, the journey ahead would have its difficult moments, its steps backward as well as forward. But for the first time in years, Lily found herself looking toward the future with hope rather than dread, and that, she knew, was the greatest healing of all.